The Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Empire fell silent as Emperor Drac entered. His tall gray form moved with practiced grace as he took his seat at the head of the oval table. 6 council members bowed their heads in respect, waiting for permission to speak. "Report," Emperor Drac commanded, his voice deep and resonant. Admiral Vex stood, activating a holographic display in the center of the table. A small blue planet appeared, rotating slowly. "Our long-range scouts have discovered this inhabited world at the edge of the Orion Arm," Vex explained. "The natives call it Earth. They are relatively primitive, but advancing at an unusual rate." The Emperor leaned forward with interest. "How primitive?" "They have achieved nuclear power and basic space travel, but have not yet developed faster-than-light technology," Vex replied. "However, their advancement curve is steep. They have progressed from simple flight to orbital capability in less than a century." Chief Scientist Mara added, "What makes them interesting is their isolation. They evolved without any contact from the wider galactic community. Their biology is compatible with our standard atmosphere, and their world is rich in resources we currently need." Emperor Drac's eyes narrowed. "Your recommendation?" Admiral Vex didn't hesitate. "Standard annexation protocol. Their military capabilities are no match for even our smallest vessels. We offer protection in exchange for resource rights, and if they refuse, then we take what we need." The Emperor finished. "Very well. Send a diplomatic vessel. Make the standard offers." Captain Tom Miller stood on the bridge of the UES Defender, Earth's newest orbital patrol ship. His crew worked quietly at their stations, monitoring Earth's defensive perimeter. The ship was small by military standards, but represented humanity's growing reach into space. "Captain, we're detecting an unknown object approaching from the outer system," reported Lieutenant Anna Parks from the sensor station. "It's big, sir, and moving fast." Miller frowned. "Asteroid?" "No, sir. It's decelerating." Parks looked up, her face pale. "Sir, it's changing course." Deliberately. Before Miller could respond, Communications Officer Ben Reed called out, "Captain, we're receiving a transmission." "It's not one of ours." The bridge fell silent as a strange melodic language filled the speakers. After a moment, it shifted to accented but understandable English. "People of Earth, we are representatives of the Galactic Empire, the governing authority of this sector of space. We offer you protection and guidance in exchange for reasonable access to your planetary resources. Prepare your leaders to receive our diplomatic envoy." Captain Miller exchanged glances with his executive officer. "Patch me through to Earth Command immediately." 3 days later, the leaders of Earth's unified government met in an emergency session. The Imperial diplomatic vessel hovered above the United Nations headquarters in New York, its sleek design unlike anything humans had built. President Laura Chen addressed the assembled representatives. "The alien ambassador has made their position clear. They expect us to sign over mining rights to 30% of our planet's resources in exchange for what they call protection and technological guidance." General Ward, head of the United Earth Defense Force, stood. "Their scans have been thorough. They know exactly what we have and don't have. Our military analysis suggests their single ship could defeat our entire defense fleet." "So we surrender?" asked the representative from Brazil. President Chen shook her head. "I've informed the Imperial ambassador that Earth respectfully declines their offer. We are willing to establish trade relations as equals, but we will not become a vassal state." Emperor Drac's fist crashed down on his throne, making his advisors flinch. They refused. A primitive world refused the Empire's generous offer. His voice was dangerously quiet. Admiral Vex bowed low. "Yes, Emperor." They suggested equal trade relations instead. "Equals?" The Emperor's laugh was cold. "Deploy a battle cruiser. Show these humans what happens when they mistake our diplomacy for weakness. A simple demonstration should correct their misunderstanding." Admiral Vex smiled. "It will be done, Emperor. The humans will learn their place. The Imperial battle cruiser emerged from hyperspace with a flash of blue light, its massive hull blocking the stars as it moved into Earth orbit. At 12 times the size of humanity's largest vessel, it cast a shadow over the planet both literally and figuratively. Commander Ray Jackson stood on the bridge of the UES Vigilant, one of 5 ships forming Earth's orbital defense line. His palms were sweaty as he studied the readouts of the alien vessel. All ships maintain position, Jackson ordered, his voice steadied despite his racing heart. Do not fire unless fired upon. Lieutenant Kelly Owen looked up from her console. Sir, they're scanning us. And the lunar colony. Jackson nodded grimly. Earth's small mining outpost on the moon housed 300 civilians. Its location made it the perfect target for someone wanting to send a message. Open a channel, Jackson said. This is Commander Jackson of the United Earth Defense Force. Your presence in our space is unwelcome. We request you withdraw immediately. The response came in the form of a bright beam of energy that shot from the Imperial ship. It struck not the Earth Defense Fleet, but streaked past them toward the moon. The lunar colony erupted in a blinding explosion, leaving nothing but a smoking crater. My God, whispered Owen. They just killed everyone. Jackson's face hardened. All ships, defensive formation. Prepare to engage. The 5 Earth vessels moved with surprising coordination, spreading out to surround the much larger Imperial ship. They opened fire simultaneously, their missiles and energy weapons seeming tiny against the massive alien craft. On the Imperial bridge, Commander Lurs watched with amusement as the human weapons sparked harmlessly against their shields. Primitive, he noted to his second-in-command. Record their attack patterns for the xenologists to study, then target one of their vessels for destruction. Before the Imperial gunners could lock on, a strange thing happened. One of the human missiles, apparently a dud that had failed to detonate on impact, drifted past the shields and attached to the hull. Sir, reported an Imperial officer, one of their projectiles has. The explosion was small but precisely targeted, rupturing the coolant line for the main weapons system. Warning lights flashed across Imperial control panels. Lurs frowned. A lucky hit. Destroy the nearest human vessel. The Imperial ship fired, its beam catching the smallest human ship and vaporizing it instantly. The remaining Earth vessels continued their seemingly ineffective attack. The demonstration is complete, Lurs decided. The Emperor wanted them frightened, not annihilated. Set course back to Imperial space. The massive ship turned gracefully and disappeared in another flash of blue light. On the bridge of the Vigilant, Commander Jackson stared at the empty space where the Imperial ship had been. They had lost the UES Dauntless with all hands. 42 men and women gone in an instant. Why did they leave? Owen asked, breaking the stunned silence. Jackson's eyes narrowed. They think they've taught us a lesson. Sir, called the sensor officer, I'm detecting debris from the alien ship where that last missile hit. Small fragments, but definitely alien technology. Jackson's expression changed from grief to determination. Collect everything. Every scrap. Get it to Dr. Parker at Defense Research immediately. 3 weeks later, Dr. Lisa Parker looked up from her microscope with excitement shining in her eyes. The lab around her was filled with scientists working around the clock, reverse engineering the recovered Imperial technology. The molecular structure is unlike anything we've seen, she told General Ward, who had come for a progress report. But we're beginning to understand their shield technology and energy weapons. Ward nodded thoughtfully. How long until we can adapt it? Years, normally, Parker admitted. But with every nation on Earth contributing their best minds. Maybe 3 years, if we're lucky. Ward looked at the holographic display, showing the Imperial battle cruiser. Then we have 3 years to prepare for their return. They think we're beaten, which gives us one advantage. What's that? Parker asked. Surprise, Ward said grimly. They have no idea what humans can do when our backs are against the wall. 3 years passed like a countdown clock for humanity. The nations of Earth, once divided by politics and old grudges, now worked together with single-minded purpose. The lunar colony attack had killed scientists and families from 12 different countries, uniting Earth in shared grief and determination. Dr. Lisa Parker hadn't seen sunlight in 3 days. She rubbed her tired eyes and looked again at the power readings on the prototype shield generator. The device was a fraction of the size of its Imperial counterpart, but produced energy fields of nearly equal strength. "It's ready for full testing," she told her assistant. "Tell General Ward we're ahead of schedule." Across the massive underground complex in the Rocky Mountains, similar breakthroughs were happening daily. Earth had become a planet-sized workshop, its factories converted to build weapons that didn't exist 3 years ago. General James Ward walked along the hidden shipyard buried deep within the asteroid belt. 6 new warships floated in the construction base, each incorporating technology reverse-engineered from the Imperial fragments. They were smaller than the Imperial battle cruiser, but packed with innovations the Empire had never seen. "How many will be ready when they return?" Ward asked the project director. 15, if they give us another 2 months, the director replied. "Plus the defense grid around Earth and Mars." Ward nodded, keeping his face neutral despite the pride he felt. Humanity had accomplished in 3 years what should have taken decades. "They'll come back soon," he said. "Their ego won't let them forget our defiance." Emperor Drac was growing impatient. Reports from his intelligence services indicated Earth had gone suspiciously quiet. Satellite observation showed increased activity in their orbital platforms, but nothing that suggested significant advancement. "It's time to finalize the annexation," he told his council. "Send a delegation to accept their surrender and establish our authority. Make it clear that any further resistance will result in more demonstrations like the lunar colony." Admiral Vex, now promoted after his successful handling of the first contact, bowed. "As you command, Emperor. I'll lead the delegation myself." The Imperial diplomatic shuttle landed at the designated site in the plains of North America. The location had been cleared of buildings and people for miles around. A sign of appropriate respect, Admiral Vex thought with satisfaction. A small group of humans awaited them, led by a gray-haired man in a military uniform adorned with medals and insignia. "I am Admiral Vex of the Galactic Empire," he announced as he descended from the shuttle. "I have come to accept your world's formal surrender and establish Imperial governance." General Ward stepped forward. "I am General James Ward of the United Earth Defense Force. I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding." Vex frowned. "There is no misunderstanding. You have seen our power. Your defiance cost you 1 colony. Further resistance will cost you your cities." Ward's face remained calm. "Perhaps you would like to see what we've been doing since your last visit." He raised a small device and pressed a button. The clear blue sky above them suddenly shimmered as dozens, then hundreds of previously invisible ships deactivated their cloaking fields. Small, sleek vessels of Earth design filled the sky in perfect formation. Vex's eyes widened. This was impossible. No primitive world could advance so quickly. "Your demonstration 3 years ago was educational," Ward said. "We appreciate the lesson. Now, would you like to see what we've learned?" Admiral Vex's shuttle returned to Imperial space at maximum speed. His report to Emperor Drac was delivered in a shaking voice. "The humans, they've built a fleet, Emperor. They've adapted our technology and improved upon it. They've unified their entire world against us." Emperor Drac's face darkened with rage. "Impossible. Prepare the invasion fleet. Not 1 ship, not a demonstration. 50 warships will reduce their world to ash." As the Imperial war machine mobilized, Earth activated its planetary defense grid and launched its new fleet. The real war was about to begin. The Imperial war fleet emerged from hyperspace as a wall of metal and energy. 50 massive warships arranged in the classic Imperial spearhead formation. Each ship bristled with weapons capable of reducing a city to ash in seconds. At the center of the formation, Fleet Commander Jack stood on the bridge of the flagship, his confidence absolute. Planetary defenses detected. Commander, reported his tactical officer. Primitive orbital platforms and a small fleet of vessels. Nothing that poses a significant threat. Jax nodded, studying the holographic display. The humans had indeed built ships since their last encounter, but the vessels were small, barely a quarter the size of Imperial cruisers. Their bizarre asymmetrical design spoke of hasty, inexperienced construction. Their resistance is a formality, Jax said. They know they cannot win. Commence the attack pattern as planned. Target their orbital defenses first, then their fleet. The massive Imperial ships began moving forward in perfect unison, a maneuver practiced across 1,000 conquered worlds. Aboard the UES Defiance, Admiral Helen Stone watched the approaching Imperial formation with calm, steady eyes. The bridge crew worked efficiently around her, their training evident in their focused silence. "They're exactly where we want them," she said quietly. "Maintain radio silence. Wait for my signal." Lieutenant Ryan at Tactical nodded. "All ships report ready, Admiral." Stone studied the Imperial formation. So predictable, so rigid in its approach. The Empire had conquered hundreds of worlds using the same tactics, because they had always worked. Until now. "Deploy countermeasures," she ordered. Across Earth's orbital paths, hundreds of small devices activated, flooding Imperial sensors with false readings. Suddenly, the clear tactical picture on Commander Jax's display dissolved into confusion. "What's happening?" he demanded. "Sensor interference," his officer replied. "They're using some kind of jamming technology, switching to backup scanning systems." By the time the Imperial fleet adjusted, the Earth ships had broken formation, scattering in seemingly random patterns. Jax frowned. "They're running. Cowards. Target the largest human vessel and fire." 3 Imperial ships fired their main weapons simultaneously at the Defiance. The energy beams streaked across space and passed through empty air as the ship's image flickered and vanished. "Hologram," Jax shouted, just as the real Defiance and 4 other Earth ships emerged from behind Earth's moon, firing specialized missiles directly at the Imperial formation's flanks. The missiles detonated not against the Imperial shields, but just before impact, creating precisely tuned energy fields that disrupted the shield harmonics. Through these temporary gaps, smaller secondary projectiles penetrated, striking vulnerable points identified during years of careful study of the recovered Imperial technology. "Shields failing on sectors 3 through 7, reported an Imperial officer, panic in his voice. "Ships 8 and 12 report critical damage." Jax stared in disbelief as his perfect formation began to break apart. The human vessels moved with unexpected speed and coordination, striking and vanishing, never presenting a clear target. "Reform the line," he ordered. "Concentrate fire on their flagship." But the Earth fleet refused to engage as expected. Instead of meeting Imperial power with power, they used their smaller, more maneuverable ships to dart between the Imperial vessels, causing the larger ships to risk hitting their own allies. 3 hours into the battle, 17 Imperial warships had been disabled or destroyed. The Earth fleet had lost only 6 vessels, and the planetary defense grid remained intact, its massive energy cannons picking off any Imperial ship that ventured too close to the planet. Emperor Drax's face was a mask of controlled fury as he watched the battle recordings. His finest fleet was in retreat, driven back by a world that should have fallen in hours. "How?" he demanded. "How did primitives develop such tactics?" Admiral Vex, now regretting his earlier confidence, spoke carefully. "The humans appear to be dangerously unpredictable, Emperor. They fight unlike any species we've encountered." "Execute Commander Jax for his failure," the Emperor ordered coldly, "and prepare a proper response. No world defies the Empire and survives." As Imperial forces regrouped, Earth celebrated its first victory, knowing the real war had only just begun. 6 months after their first victory, Humanity was no longer content to simply defend Earth. The Imperial retreat had given them time to build more ships and train more crews. Now they were ready to take the fight to the enemy. Commander Mark Davis stood on the bridge of the UES Striker, a new class of vessel designed specifically for hit-and-run attacks. His ship led a fleet of 20 similar craft, all painted matte black to avoid visual detection in space. They had been traveling for 3 weeks to reach their target, Outpost Krell, an Imperial supply depot that supported operations in Earth's sector. "Prepare for exit from hyperspace," Davis ordered. "Weapons hot, stealth systems active." The human fleet emerged from hyperspace far from the standard arrival coordinates, using a technique they had developed independently of Imperial navigation protocols. Imperial sensors, programmed to monitor known approach vectors, didn't detect them. "We're unnoticed," reported Lieutenant Foster at Tactical. "The outpost is operating at normal status." Davis nodded. "Begin Phase 1. 3 small ships broke from the main group, approaching the outpost from different angles. They deployed specially designed buoys that began broadcasting Imperial emergency codes, codes extracted from the computers of damaged Imperial ships after the defense of Earth. Alarms blared across Outpost Krell. Station Commander Trex rushed to the control center, where his officers were trying to respond to what appeared to be multiple Imperial ships in distress. 3 distress signals. Trex questioned. All at once. Verified Imperial authentication codes. His communications officer confirmed. They're requesting immediate assistance. Trex hesitated only briefly. Dispatch rescue vessels to all 3 locations and alert Imperial Command FAT. His words were cut short as the main power grid suddenly failed, plunging the outpost into darkness before emergency systems activated. "What happened?" Trex demanded. The answer came in the form of a massive explosion as the outpost's main communications array erupted in flames. Simultaneously, the defensive shield generators were struck by precision weapons fired from invisible attackers. "We're under attack," Trex shouted. "Battle stations." But the outpost's defenders found themselves in chaos. The humans had studied Imperial protocols and knew exactly how they would respond. As Imperial troops rushed to defensive positions, they encountered corridors sealed by precision strikes or filled with non-lethal gas that left them unconscious. Commander Davis led the main assault himself, his team moving through the outpost with practiced efficiency. Unlike Imperial soldiers with their rigid formations, the humans fought like guerrilla fighters, using cover and unconventional tactics. "Remember, we want prisoners and data, not a body count," Davis reminded his troops through their comm system. "Disable when possible." On the outpost's lower levels, Intelligence Officer Alex Morgan made her way to the central database with a small team of tech specialists. While the fighting raged above, they worked quickly to extract valuable information: Imperial fleet movements, communication protocols, and most importantly, data on other worlds under Imperial control. "I've got something," called one of the techs. "Records of resistance movements on at least 7 Imperial-controlled planets." Morgan's eyes lit up. "Download everything." These could be potential allies. When the battle ended 3 hours later, Outpost Krell was under human control. The Imperial rescue ships had been captured intact, and most of the outpost personnel were prisoners rather than casualties, a concept foreign to Imperial military doctrine, which expected no quarter in defeat. Commander Davis established a secure communication link to Earth Command. "Outposts secured with minimal losses. We've obtained valuable intelligence and captured Imperial vessels for study." On the other side of the link, Admiral Stone smiled. "Excellent work. The Emperor thought we would cower on our planet and wait for his next attack. He's about to learn that humans don't just defend. We take the fight to our enemies." As news of the human victory spread through subspace communications, the subjugated species on nearby worlds began to whisper among themselves, "If humans could defeat the Empire, Perhaps their own freedom was possible too. The Grand Hall of Unity, built in the neutral territory of Switzerland, buzzed with activity as representatives from 7 formerly subjugated worlds gathered with human leaders. The room was designed to accommodate various physiologies, with special seating for the serpentine Durrani and atmospheric filters for the methane-breathing Vault. It was the first interspecies diplomatic summit in Earth's history. Ambassador Emma Wilson stood at the podium, her voice steady as she addressed the diverse gathering. Behind her hung a simple banner displaying Earth's new motto, "Together we stand." For centuries, the Empire has conquered through division, Wilson said. They isolate worlds, convince each species that they stand alone, and then offer false protection while taking everything of value. Today, we prove them wrong. The translator devices provided by Earth scientists converted her words into 7 different languages simultaneously. Around the room, beings of various forms nodded in understanding. Humans were not expected to resist, continued Wilson. We were certainly not expected to win battles against Imperial forces. But what truly terrifies the Emperor is not our military strength. It's the idea that we might inspire others. A tall, blue-skinned delegate from Terezi stood. The Empire has ruled my world for 8 generations. We had forgotten what freedom feels like. When we received proof that humans had defeated Imperial warships, our people found courage again. One by one, the representatives shared similar stories. Each world had suffered under Imperial rule. Each had small resistance movements that now looked to Earth for leadership and hope. We propose a formal alliance, Wilson said, displaying a holographic document. Equal partnership between all our worlds. Shared technology, mutual defense, and a united front against Imperial aggression. Commander John Reed watched the proceedings from his security post near the main entrance. As head of Summit Security, he had spent weeks preparing for this meeting, coordinating with Intelligence Officer Alex Morgan to screen all delegations for potential Imperial spies. Reed's comm unit vibrated silently. Movement on the perimeter, came Morgan's voice. 3 unmarked vehicles approaching from the east. Reed tensed. Imperial agents. Likely, Morgan confirmed. Facial recognition matched 2 known operatives. Reed signaled his team with hand gestures, deploying them to defensive positions without disrupting the summit. As Wilson continued outlining the alliance proposal, Reed moved quietly toward a side exit. Outside, Morgan waited with a tactical team. They're trying to reach the service entrance, she reported, carrying what looks like explosive devices. Reed's expression hardened. The Empire wants to kill the alliance before it's born. They moved swiftly through the building's service corridors, intercepting the Imperial saboteurs just as they placed the first explosive. The firefight was brief but intense, with Reed's team using non-lethal weapons to capture rather than kill the infiltrators. We want them alive for questioning, Reed reminded his team as they secured the last operative. Let's find out what else the Emperor has planned. Inside the Grand Hall, the Alliance vote proceeded without interruption, unaware of the danger that had been averted. When the final delegate cast their approval, the room erupted in applause. Wilson looked out at the diverse faces, some with tentacles, some with scales, some with features humans would find alien, yet all expressing the same emotion: hope. Today marks the beginning of the Galactic Alliance of Free Worlds, she announced formally. From this day forward, no member world stands alone against tyranny. When Emperor Drac received news of the alliance, he shattered his viewing screen in rage. Impossible, he roared. 7 worlds in open rebellion. And these, humans, orchestrating it all. Admiral Vex watched cautiously as the Emperor's rage built. The situation is concerning, Emperor, but still manageable. Our forces are still superior in. Superior, Drac hissed. We lost 3 major outposts in the last month. Our supply lines are disrupted. Rebellions are spreading to worlds that have been loyal for centuries. For the first time in his 1,000-year reign, Emperor Drac felt something unfamiliar: doubt. The Empire's perfect order was cracking. all because one small blue planet had refused to surrender. "Gather all available forces," he ordered finally. "We will crush this alliance and make an example of Earth that the galaxy will never forget." But deep in the Imperial High Command, the first whispers of dissent had already begun to spread. The Imperial capital world of Draconis glowed with artificial light as the last defense fleet formed a protective barrier around the planet. Once, the Empire had controlled 1,000 worlds. Now only the central systems remained loyal, and even they were beginning to waver. Emperor Drac stood before the great viewing window of his palace, watching as hundreds of ships gathered for the final stand. His once proud posture was now stooped, his eyes sunken from lack of sleep. "How did it come to this?" he asked quietly. Admiral Vex, the last of his loyal commanders, had no good answer. In just 18 months, the human-led alliance had pushed Imperial forces back in system after system. The seemingly unstoppable empire had been revealed as vulnerable, and subject worlds had risen in rebellion faster than they could be subdued. "The Alliance fleet has entered the system, Emperor," Vex reported. "They're requesting your surrender." Drac's laugh was hollow. "Surrender? To primitives?" On the command deck of the Alliance flagship Freedom, Admiral Helen Stone studied the Imperial capital world on her view screen. Behind her stood representatives from 22 worlds that had joined the Alliance, former enemies now united against a common oppressor. "They've concentrated their remaining forces around the Palace District," reported Commander Davis, now her second in command. "The rest of the planet has minimal defenses." Stone nodded. "Send the message one more time. We want Drac's surrender, not more bloodshed." "He won't surrender," said the Durrani ambassador, his serpentine form coiling nervously. "The Emperor would rather die than admit defeat." "Then we'll need to proceed with the alternative plan," Stone replied. She opened a channel to the entire Alliance fleet. "All ships, battle positions. Remember our priorities. Minimal civilian casualties, capture of Imperial leaders, and securing of the central computer network." The battle for Draconis began not with a frontal assault, but with a series of precision strikes on key infrastructure. Alliance ships targeted power stations, shield generators, and communication hubs, but carefully avoided residential areas. Within hours, the Imperial Palace stood isolated, its defenses failing one by one. As the battle raged above, hundreds of Imperial ships not involved in the defense were fleeing the system. These vessels carried Imperial officials, wealthy citizens, and military officers who saw the inevitable end approaching. Their destinations varied, but their message was the same everywhere they stopped. "Avoid war with humans at all costs," warned an Imperial captain as his ship refueled at a distant outpost. "They don't fight like normal beings. They adapt, they improvise, they never stop coming." At a trade station on the galaxy's edge, a high-ranking Imperial diplomat shared drinks with officials from a previously neutral empire. "The humans were supposed to be an easy conquest," he told them. "A primitive world, just developing spaceflight. Now look, they've united half the galaxy against us." These warnings spread faster than official news of the war, reaching civilizations that had never encountered humans before. The stories grew with each retelling. Humans could reverse engineer any technology within days. Humans fought more fiercely when wounded. Humans never surrendered even when defeat was certain. In the Imperial Palace, Emperor Drac watched as Alliance forces breached the outer defenses. For the first time in his long life, he felt fear. "How?" he asked again. "How did one small world bring down an empire that stood for 1,000 years?" The answer came as Alliance troops led by Commander John Reed stormed the throne room. Reed approached the Emperor, who seemed suddenly small and ordinary, without his aura of invincibility. "Emperor Drac," Reed announced formally, "by authority of the Galactic Alliance of Free Worlds, you are relieved of power." Drac stared at the human with bewilderment. "You should have been an easy conquest," he said quietly. "Just another resource world." Reed allowed himself a small smile. "That was your first mistake. Humans have never been good at doing what they're expected to do. As news of the Emperor's capture spread across the galaxy, the Alliance began the work of rebuilding. Former Imperial worlds joined freely, transforming the political landscape. At the center of it all stood Earth, once isolated, now a respected power known for both its fierce defense of freedom and its compassion in victory. And on distant worlds, advanced civilizations received the Imperial refugees and their warning. If you value your empire, never start a war with humans. They don't know when they're beaten. And they never, ever give up.